Now, last week you tried to host an event for the Australian Taxpayers Alliance, of which you're employed. And at the event, there were 3 senior LNP politicians were going to speak. And about 90 people were attending. They'd paid $30 a head to get in. And 2 hours before the event, you received a call from LNP State Directory Ben Riley. What did he say?
Well, he got in touch with our chief economist, John Humphreys, who is our chief economist at the Australian Taxpayers Alliance. And he essentially entailed that because of my attendance and my activity prior to being suspended by the Liberal National Party meant that these 3 LNP MPs, despite agreeing to come onto our panel to discuss the state budget, that 2 hours before they were somehow no longer able to attend solely because of my attendance, which I felt in many ways was a knee-jerk reaction and completely over the top, Fred.
Now,
and I think it's
let's just look into that. So firstly, this was triggered by a call from The Guardian, which has been going after you for some years. So just to be clear, the LNP was spooked by The Guardian, as if it owes The Guardian any favours. It's the most left-wing publication.
That's right.
It's even to the left of the ABC, which is saying something. Now, so this is all... The Guardian has been going after you because of something you did in 2019 and which I believe you have since come to regret. Now, for the benefit of the viewers, tell us what you did in 2019.
Exactly. So in 2019, I was the chair of the Gold Coast Young LNP, which is one of the largest branches in Queensland. And we were also one of the youngest executives. I was only 19 at the time. And we decided to do a bit of a stunt. We went to schoolies. A lot of people would say that was my first mistake. But we went to schoolies and we essentially asked school leavers a number of questions on a range of political topics, anticipating that we'd get some humorous answers. Obviously, you got a lot of people there who were intoxicated, having a great time. And we kept the questions fairly simple. It was, what are your thoughts on Scott Morrison? What are your thoughts on freedom of speech? And what are your thoughts on our Australian national flag and national anthem? And it was that final question which elicited a response, which was, we've got to stop celebrating a culture that couldn't invent the bloody wheel. Obviously referring to Indigenous Australians, or Indigenous culture rather. And obviously, the toxicity of that debate, and we've seen it play out during this whole Voice to Parliament referendum, is it's very divisive and it's also very sensitive. And as a result, simply by holding the microphone, I was lambasted in the media and cancelled by The Guardian. But it appears that they're not done yet. They're still trying to bring me down.
Well, it was interesting that you made that distinction between Indigenous Australians and Indigenous culture. That would suggest to me that you clearly bear no grudge towards our Indigenous brothers and sisters, but it was just merely the culture that existed before white settlement that was being possibly mildly criticised at the time. But 4 years later, you were only 19 at the time, 4 years later, you're still trying to leave this behind. Now, just for the record, Barclay, what is your attitude towards our Indigenous brothers and sisters?
Well, exactly right, Fred. I mean, I truly do believe in the rights of the individual, and individualism as someone who's on the centre right. And I think that, as I make that distinction, I make it very, very clear that to believe that one race of people is somehow better than another person is completely false. It's also definitionally racist. But however, to believe that one culture can be better than another is anything but. In fact, that's the tale of history. That cultures, develop and they bring things from each other. No one can. I think everyone can agree that the culture of ancient Rome was truly one that was quite a landmark. And we got a lot of things from the ancient Greeks as well. And indeed, the culmination is Western culture, and I truly believe that is one of the best cultures, if not the best cultures in human history. And if we segue that to a modern context, I think that folks on the left, the Labor Party and the Greens, they seem to think that they can pigeonhole people into different categories, particularly on the basis of race, which we've seen play out during this whole Voice to Parliament referendum. They want a race-based body enshrined into the Constitution. And, I thought that was the kind of things that we dealt with back in later centuries, where we actually used to divide ourselves. And in a modern Western liberal democracy, we'd move past that, but apparently not. I believe it's quite regressive to group people by their race. So, as a fundamental believer in individual liberty, I think we're all equal under our flags.